to rangatahi and Popatua Nuku, and mihi to tangata whanau around Aotearoa, and to mana whanau in all the rohe that you live in and where you're from right now. And we'll start with karakia. Whakatakati hau ki te uru, whakatakati hau ki te tonga, kia mā ki tina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Hi a ki ana te ata kura, he tiu, he huka, he huho, hi tihe mauri ora. Kia ora. I'm getting a lot of feedback on the sound on my video. So if anybody else is having the same issue, I got halfway through the karakia there and all this buzzing and strange sound coming back at me. So if you're having any kind of technical issues, then Natalie, who you see there from Inspiring Communities, she's our tech person. So please flick her a chat if anything goes wrong in your tech. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. So Mātauranga Māori and Indigenous parenting and child-rich communities is the topic today. So some of you may already know about child-rich communities, but for those of you who don't, I'll give you a little bit of a potted history. So child-rich communities came into being in 2014. Many of you will remember that that was the time of huge change in the well-being and child sector, where we had Vulnerable Children's Act, Ministry for Vulnerable Children, Child Poverty Monitor, those sorts of things. Some incredibly needed change at the time, however, a lot of deficit language. And what Inspiring Communities saw at the time when they were doing their work on the ground was that that wasn't the case. There was not deficit of our mokopuna on the ground, grassroots in communities. In fact, there were some incredible initiatives and projects and ways of working that were happening across the motu. So what they did then was start to investigate that, and there was an incredible thirst for a network of people to come together to start exploring more ways of working that could be grassroots or could be supportive of grassroots initiatives that followed community-led development practices, but that had its focus on children and youth well-being. And so that was child-rich communities. And what is that? Well, it's a network of people, really. If you look around now, you'll see many, many of us here who all have our intention, I'm guessing, in your work, looking at the well-being of our mokopuna, both now and into the future. And what's been really clear over the last while in research, again and again, is, children and young people, they don't live in isolation. They live with whānau, they live in community. And if time is spent strengthening their connection to their community, then their well-being flourishes. So wherever we sit across different sectors in the motu, we all have an opportunity to contribute in this way. So this slide that Nat's just put up there just shows this really. This is a slide from Inspiring Communities. And you'll see, first of all, this is community-led development. So place whenua is always, crucial. And of course, needing to acknowledge tangata whenua in that place too, and acknowledge te Māori and the gifts and the taonga that can bring to us. And you'll see the weavings that come through each community, whether you're a resident, whether you're local or central government, whether you're social service providers, we all have a part to play. It's not just grassroots community services that are doing the mahi here. They need to be well-resourced, they need to be well-funded, they need to have services that are supporting tamariki and mokopuna, rangatahi, whānau. And there's various ways that we can all begin to have strategy and policy that supports this kind of growth from the ground too. So you see on the left of that slide, these are some of the basis of community-led development, some of the foundation practices and principles, that there are ways of operating. So building from strengths, working with diverse people, learning by doing, those are some of the aspects. And so no matter where you find yourself in that chart, in that weaving in communities, then it's possible to ask ourselves, you know, what are we doing in our organisations, in our services, in our policies and strategies and planning, which really adds value to tamariki and rangatahi and whānau in the place where they are in their community. And adding value, you know, really is about how is it that we are supporting the mana of all of those people to flow. And there's wiggle room for all of us, you know, whether it's resourcing, whether it's in social services, and instead of just delivering our usual service provision, we start thinking about what would it be like if we asked rangatahi what it is that they wanted, how it is that they would feel more connected in their communities, and we begin to flavour our work in that way. If you just move to the next slide, Nat. So child-rich communities also have some core practices, some ways of working, which were taken from 21 places across the motu, who were all working in child-rich ways. So they had their basis in community-led development, but they were creating child and whānau-rich places across the motu. So some similar ways of working, and all of these, you know, really had their end result in enabling the flow of mana for tamariki and rangatahi. So engagement, you know, how to engage within community, again, looking at everybody as having value. Empowerment and going beyond social service delivery. So not doing too, looking outside of the usual systems that we work in, and beginning to see, you know, yeah, how can we create a bit of wiggle room? How can we do something that's not just business as usual? Especially because we see so many systems these days that are just not really serving our young people and our whānau. So instead of just doing same old, you know, where can we begin to look for some difference? And some of that may be just tagging a bit of your resource to start considering working in these ways, or supporting the people who are working in these ways. Could you flick to the next one, please, Nick? So collaborating, relationship focused, being responsive, learning by doing, looking at the whole. This is not rocket science, but it is ways that often we're not funded to work. Often we're working within a system which doesn't enable this kind of flavour. So this is an opportunity for us to hear from our incredible speakers today. To hear how do they do this when we know that pre-colonial times, our mokopuna, our tamariki, they flourished, and our whānau, they flourished. And how come? What can we learn from that in this day when our other systems are, you know, so tightly ran and so difficult to be in often? So I just want to really welcome our speakers. It's just a joy to have them here. Just really stoked to bring the Mātauranga that they have, and to share that with us. So yeah, we have 3 speakers today. So Liz Emery Hart from Tupuna Parenting, and Matala Toifua from Pacifica Mamas, and Hannah Tufari from Talking Matters. So I'm going to hand over to them shortly. And how we'll roll today is to hear from our 3 speakers consecutively, one after the other. If you have any questions, any pārtai, please load those in the chat as we go along. And Natalie will go back to the chat at the end of the time, and we can come back to your questions before we go into breakout rooms. If you haven't already, if you can load your name and your organisation into the chat, and then, yeah, any other questions that you have as we go along. So we'll hear from our speakers about their mahi, how they create these child-rich places using the ways of their tupuna. It's just really an honour for us to be able to receive and hear that information. So I really want to thank you for sharing that and just honouring your tupuna and their ways, and allowing that to flow through so we can learn today. So I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, who is Liz Hart from Tupuna Parenting. Kia ora, Liz.
Kia ora. Yeah, He mihi nui Louise and Nat and Inspiring Communities. Kia ora koutou, na mihi nui kia koutou, kui hui hui mai nei I tēnei wānanga I te ata, na mihi nui mō te wiki o te reo Māori. Ko Waiau, he uri tēnei no Ngāpuhi, no Ngāti Parau, ko Elizabeth Emerea Hart, tōku ingoa, tēnā koutou katoa. You can call me Liz, everyone does. I'm co-founder of Tupuna Parenting, which is a movement to share the gentle and respectful parenting ways of pre-colonial Māori with whānau across the motu. Are the slides up, Nat? I can't see. Oh, aye. There's me. And there's my mama. I inherited this kaupapa from my mum. I suppose I should have put her in the intro as well. Nā mihi. Yeah, ko Helen Mountain Hart tōku mama. Kua mate ia. So she was born in 1942 and died in 2019. So this Mātauranga isn't just mum and mine. It's also Nanny, so her mum's Emere Kā, who was born in 1901 and died in 1996. And it's not even just hers either. It's Nanny's mums, Nanny's nannies, and so on and so on. Walk like you've got 3,000 ancestors behind you, they say. And I do, and so do all of you. Next slide, please. Our tupuna were gentle, respectful, and loving parents and whānau, with a strong sense of community and togetherness in their whānau, in their hapu, in their iwi. We know how our tupuna raised and treated their pepe and tamariki from lots of sources. Mātauranga, our knowledge, pūrākau, oral histories, waiata ori, traditional lullabies, whakatauki, proverbs, and early explorer accounts who were so surprised by our different parenting ways that they wrote home about them in their books and letters. The evidence shows that tupuna Māori were gentle, respectful and loving parents in whānau pre-colonisation, and that once were warriors was not how Māori parented or treated their whānau. We also rely on whānau pūrākau, so whānau oral histories, to capture parenting lessons from our tupuna. Taonga tuku iho, treasures handed down. This Mātauranga is a key way for whānau to really connect with the kaupapa through their own whānau stories and through their own generational memories. Next slide, please. So there are two pillars of tupuna parenting. Tuatahi, the slide's got two ones. Anyway, I missed that in my drafting. Tuatahi, pepia born tapu. Tapu is often described, I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these and give some examples too. Tapu is often described as simply meaning sacred, but how you treat, and for a one-word translation, that's okay, but how you treat things and places and people that are tapu really varies. There's a spectrum. From a Māori worldview, we believe that we're descended from the atua, from the gods, and that tapu can be a form of protection, setting people and things apart, untouchable, not to be disturbed. Don't swim in that river, or don't climb that maunga, that mountain. It's tapu. But then tapu is also an inherited quality of all people, and it's a quality that demands respect. So at what point in Pepe's life do they stop being tapu? And it's a good reminder for everyone that they never do. And so that means that that you are still tapu as well. Our tupuna understood the profound importance of tapu and acknowledged it in many ways. They buried the whenua and the pito, the placenta and the cord stump, connecting tamariki with the land from the very beginning. They sang waiata ori, traditional lullabies, weaving these melodies of love and protection around their little ones. They used gentle words and gentle actions, nurturing their wairua with kindness. The other po, tuarua, is mana. And you may not know it, but pepe are born with mana. And people find this surprising. And perhaps that's because not everyone understands the layers of mana. The dictionary says mana is a spiritual power, authority, prestige, and status. But mana is not just something that you earn with age and good service to your whānau and community. Mana is rooted in and sourced from tapu. They don't exist independently. Where something is more tapu, it has more mana. So then the tapu nature and the mana of Pepe is there right from birth, and our tupuna knew it. They knew that that potential source of power and greatness was right there, and that they just needed to nurture it and help it grow. So how would we see tapu and mana acknowledged by our tupuna? Our tupuna involved Pepe and tamariki in everyday activities and rituals, allowing them to explore their environment and learn from every moment. They nurtured their well-being. When Louisa's slide came up before, talking about some of the values and the ways that child-rich communities expresses themselves, I thought she'd read my slide, because what I've got written here is our tupuna nurtured their well-being through whanaungatanga, through the bonds of family and community, through connection, which is what Louisa's like. They did it through aroha, unconditional love. They did it through manaaki, support and engagement. And they did it through tautoko, encouragement and empowerment. So yeah, I think we've got a clear alignment in that regard. I've got one more slide. I'm sure I've run over time. Kia ora hamai. Where's your village whānau? You know, it's the old cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. But for our tupuna, it was absolutely true. Everyone helped look after each other and look after Pepe and tamariki. They were the shared responsibility of the kāinga, who are often extended whānau, but not always. It's also important to note that in reo, whaia means both mother and auntie, and matua means both father and uncle. Oh, kia ora, Louise. Because those roles were interchangeable. So when a tamaiti called out, whaia, they didn't necessarily only need their mother. They need someone who would respond to them, care for them, nurture them, respond to their request. So whaia or matua, that's that kāinga vibe, right? Having multiple trusted adults in that, raising that Pepe and tamariki. Having a kāinga really made parenting easier. I've got a couple of whakatauki, then if I've got a few more minutes, I'll keep going. What's one whakatauki? He tangi tō te tamariki, he whakamā tō te pākeke. The cry of the child is the shame of the adult. I know I don't have slides for this. I'm just ad-libbing now. Sorry. It was embarrassing for adults if Pepe or tamariki they were looking after cried for any reason. So in terms of acknowledging the mana of Pepe, it wasn't a shh, be quiet. Our tupuna would help Pepe and tamariki stop crying, because their cry was their voice. They would listen to their voice and respect their needs. They didn't let Pepe cry to sleep, but they also did have a whole whānau to support them when things got hard. So we know there are many ways that tupuna would respect tamariki. They would take tamariki as young as 4 or 5 years old to big hui, even with rangatira, with chiefs in attendance. And the tamariki would sit and listen and ask questions. And they were answered respectfully and never dismissed. And the explorers at the time couldn't work out why. And it's because it wasn't why they were answering these kids as if they were the same age as the adults. And it's because it wasn't about age. It was about mana. And our tupuna knew that those tamariki had it and treated them as such. Right. I could keep going for ages, but I'll call that enough for now. That's tupuna parenting in a nutshell. Vesi, kia ora. Tupuna parenting in a nutshell, just the cliff notes. I mean, but even that summary is kind of huge, and I don't even get to actually talking about my day job. This knowledge is still fairly unknown by Whānau and the kaimahi who support them. This is a relatively new movement. Mum and I started this mahi in 2018, though she and her Whānau cousins and stuff had tried sharing this earlier. But yeah, we still need to break that once we're warriors stereotype about Māori Whānau. We still need to decolonize our parenting and remember tupuna ways. And many whānau don't realize that their parenting needs decolonizing, and so that's a big first step. Aye, but yeah, we've got a big piece of mahi to do, but this kaupapa, child-rich communities can absolutely help. So, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. I'm really pleased to be here. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Liz. Wow, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've got about 50 pātai sitting there right now. So we'll come back to pātai after we've heard from all of our speakers. So yeah, just make a note and load them in the chat. That's what I've been doing as well. So if you don't ask your questions, well, I'll just jump in there. All right, ngā mihi nui ki a koe. Thank you, Liz. Let's move over to hear from Matala from Pacifica Mama. Over.
Kia ora koutou, katoa, ko vini toku maunga, ko moana nui o kiwa toku moana, no o tutahi a hou, ko mātala tau fua toku ingoa. Tāno whalava, mālo lava, le soifua maua, malangi e mama. My name is Mātala tau fua, and I am here on behalf of our Pacifica Mama group, really just to go through some of the awesome initiatives that we run through this group, and also talk about how we developed as a group, and how sort of that initiative came about among some new time mums, and also some mums that you know, we've been through it before, but obviously didn't have that support when we were first time mums ourselves. So I'd like to just take this opportunity also to thank Louise and Natalie from Inspiring Communities for allowing this space for us to just chat, and also give more information to those who obviously don't know much about us, to get to know what we do and how we involve ourselves within our communities, and how we uplift our children within this group as well. So yes, this is my lovely photo on this first slide, and these are my two beautiful children, Milan, who is turning 11 this year, and Mahina Lei, who is 7 months old. I also sit as a funding advisor at Rata Foundation, so happy to kōrero about that also later on, and share some light about some funding as well. Thank you, Louise. Sorry, Natalie, we'll go on to that next slide. So Pacifica Mamas is obviously a new group that was created in November 2022. It was an idea that sprung from 4 mamas who had just had their first born babies, as well as myself, who was carrying at the time. So at that time, we felt that there was a huge gap in our communities around sort of finding support for our Pacific Mama, and where could we go to? Like, there was nowhere that we could sort of share our ideas with, or share our commonalities with, because other groups just weren't feeding that Pacific richness that we were trying to find as Pacific mums. So we're also proudly umbrellaed by the Christchurch Methodist Mission under the Community-Led Initiatives Fund. So thank you so much to CMM for their support, especially throughout this first year of Pacifica Mamas. We can go into that next slide, Natalie, and I'll just like to add also, while we look at these beautiful mums that have come through our doors, our purpose is to provide a culturally safe environment and support for our mama and pepe of Pacifica heritage. So not only are we encouraging our Pacifica mums, but we also have our mums who have Pacifica partners that come through with their pepe as well, that feel like, you know, they don't have to try to be Pacific, or they don't have to feel like they're not Pacific enough to sit in these spaces. So to be able to have that support for them in this We Network group is awesome. And it actually develops and heightens their well-being as first-time mums, you know, and we really need that support. And to show that they've got this space is really encouraging, and it lets us know that, you know, they're going off and they're able to keep those strong, rich Pacific ties between themselves and their pepe, and also with, you know, their partners at home. So that's really encouraging. We have a beautiful pua in our Pacific culture, which, you know, you have some with 5 and some with 4 petals, but we have identified 4 strong values that we want to sort of create within our space, and that's respect, connection, family, and I didn't even practice learning how to say this word, so I do apologize. I don't even know. It's apologize. I'll just leave that to 3 petals today, guys. I'm very nervous right now, so aroha mai. So yeah, so those core values are something that we hold close within our Pacific heritage. You know, we make sure that all our spaces that we dive deep into within our community groups, that we hold these core values, because it opens up, thank you, Liz, it opens up that space so that everyone is heard and everyone is listened to. And without those core values, you know, we're not really doing ourselves any justice for our mums to feel valued in, you know, these spaces that are kind of like a barrier for ourselves as a mum is actually getting to these groups. So in order for us to make these spaces available, we have to have these values in place so that mums feel so comfortable that they can actually leave their homes with their newborns. Sorry, it's making me emotional because it's you have to have some sort of light to really actually get out that door, and this group makes me want to get out that door. So bless. I hope I'm sending some great
No, it's just beautiful listening to you, Mātauranga.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure seeing this group flourish and seeing all our mums and their bubs be happy in this space. So we're doing good work within our community, guys, and with our pepe. So that's the blessing. Our next slide, Natalie. A few of the great activities that have come through this group. We've also been blessed to know people of Pasifika that sit in these spaces. And so we've had activities such as money and financial education is very important, especially for our young mums that come through with young families. Infant CPR as Pasifika, we usually think that we don't need to know this information, but it is very important. And it's important for us to teach these in the space as well.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Karen.
Karen, if you could just mute your mic. Your mic's just popped on and we're hearing background noise. Sorry. Thank you.
Just important for us to be able to also feed this infant CPR information to our mātua, you know, our elders who always love to take babies off our hands and look after them. So it's great learning for everyone. We've also had loopy tunes who do great sing-along sessions come in to us and, you know, have these really one-to-one sessions with us instead of being in massive group settings with heaps of pepe. We can actually have that moment with our mums and our bubs. We do great Talanoa sessions with our mums. We have a tendency of telling great stories, you know, and being in a space where everyone is actually listening and focusing in is such a impactful experience to sort of sit in and actually take it all in, you know. So having those talanoa sessions are so important. And we've also started a physical movement activity, which happens on the off fortnight, so the other week, which we call our Mamas on the Move. And, you know, we've just been able to find a spot out in the eastern side, you know, using up the red zones and just getting out there and having some fresh air and actually filling our cup that way with our physical well-being as well as our mental. So yeah, we've got so many ideas, and that's the thing about these great initiatives is that once it kickstarts, we just have so much information coming in and feedback from our mamas, and we just kind of want to be able to serve it all. But obviously, we've got to do it in a way where we'll be able to sustain those programs in the future and actually see our group develop. We run every Wednesday. Sorry, I did forget to mention. We run every Wednesday at the Christchurch Methodist Mission building out in New Brighton on, sorry, Fee, correct me if I'm wrong, it's on Union Street. Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. And so we run that every Wednesday from 10 a.m. and we say about, you know, close off at 12, but we just have our mums love to stay and chat, and you know, we love to see our kids on the ground just enjoying their environment and being with their own, you know, like just seeing a familiar, like, oh, this baby is also crying as loud as I am, you know, and not feeling like that's an issue, and our parents and our mums not feeling like, you know, that in a space where their child can't actually just scream, you know. And I love the fact that we're able to support our new mums and our mums that feel like they don't have that support anywhere else, and that's where we sit in that space. So yes, bua means a flower, so it's like there's frangipani and then there's bua and there's hibiscus. So yeah, maybe I'll put a photo up on another slide, on another event that I'm invited to. So yes, next slide, Natalie. And I think this is our last one. Yeah, this is one of our beautiful mums, Jojo, who was a founder of this group, who had her firstborn, and also blessed to call her my sister and one of my best friends. And blessed that my best friends were able to have this space at this time of their life where we couldn't have this back when I had my first child. So for them to have that support and this network, oh my gosh, my cousin's laughing at me, crying, I think. To have this space is so important and so valid for our Pacific mums and our bebes. Yes, and I'm just very blessed for this opportunity to share my tears and my love for this group, and also hope that I can chat more about what our group does in our breakout rooms, and also if there are any questions that needed to be answered and that maybe I've missed something, feel free to ask.
Ngāmihi nui, wow, just yeah, such rich kōrero. Thank you so much for sharing, and yeah, you know, just obviously your passion and the difference that it's made, you know, for your hapori, for your community, for the pepe, for you know, everybody who comes. Is just really obvious. And same hearing from you too, Liz, you know, just the ways this is strengthening to the whānau who you're connecting with. It's yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Okay, let's move on and hear from Hannah from Talking Matters. Kia ora, Hannah.
Tēnā koutou. I te tūtahi mihi ana kia koutou ko Child-Rich Communities i tō whakaritinga i tēnei hui. O te rau mihi ana kia kōrua ko ngā kai kōrero, kua kōrero tia. Kia koe matala ngā mihi o roimata e hiki ana i te aroha mo ngā tamariki me te whānau. Kia koe Liz hoki mihi ana kia kōrero. Ka te ka mihi ana ki a koutou ko tai mai te ranei. So just big thank you to Child Rich Communities for organising today, and to Matala and Liz who, sharing kaupapa that are really close to our hearts around our whānau, and our cultures and our languages. Mihi ana ki a kōrua. So ko waio, ko hana tūwhare tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no te hokianga whakapau karakia, me kai kohe, no ngā puhi ahau. So I hail from the far north and the hokianga, and kai kohe. Engari, tipu ake au ki Tāmaki Makaurau. I grew up in Tāmaki and in Tauranga. I'm a second language learner of te reo Māori. I did most of my schooling in English medium education, and I had a small stint in kohanga reo when I was a child, and I came back to te reo Māori as an adult. So I have a background in speech and language therapy. I studied as a speech and language therapist, and after my studies, I did a year of full immersion te reo Māori. So that was about 5 years ago, and I've been learning te reo since then. At the fluent level, but still learning. I still get nervous around matatau as speakers, but still on the journey, still learning, still trying every day. And after those studies, I went to work for Talking Matters, which is a kaupapa around the first 1,000 days for our babies. It's around language, around well-being for our tamariki. And within Talking Matters, I thought I've got my really Western speech therapy knowledge here, and I've got my Mātauranga Māori here, and my experience of being a second language learner. So I was really trying to figure out how to bring those two knowledge pieces together to create kaupapa that would support our whānau. And the kaupapa that we come up with is called He Waka Kōrero. It's a kaupapa around, it's really around supporting whānau who are wanting to use more te reo Māori with their babies. So we explore how do we do that if we're still learning te reo? How do we build a language plan for our whānau? What are some of the strategies and tips? And a lot of it's really around confidence. So feeling confident enough as a Māori to even step into a reo Māori space. Often we think it's a lot of the technical language learning bits that we need to support whānau with the reo. That's definitely an important part, but a huge part is just confidence. Confidence and feeling like you're Māori enough or enough to start learning te reo. So a big reason, a big part of what I do, why I do what I do, partly for 90% of Māori are interested in te reo. So there was a census, I think it was in one of the census, or there's a study done that showed 90% of Māori are interested in te reo, or it's important to them. At the moment, we have around 23% of Māori say that they can speak te reo. That's gone up in the last few years. But when we think about that, if 90% of Māori are interested in te reo and it's important to them, and only 23 of us can speak it, we've got a long way to go. So really wanting to create kaupapa for whānau where they can connect to their reo in safe and exciting and interesting ways. When we look at the history of te reo, there were many laws and acts that disrupted the transmission of te reo through the generations. And pretty much every whānau has their own stories and kōrero around that. And many whānau want to learn through this disruption of te reo through the generations. Often our whānau, when we don't know about how te reo was disrupted through the generations, then often we can blame ourselves for not having the reo. So we think, I'm Māori, I should know the reo, but I don't. But when we have a better understanding of the history of te reo and why that happens, it helps us navigate that space a bit more. And I really think that te reo Māori is a source of well-being for our whānau. I know it has been for me, and I've seen it with lots of other whānau, and there's more and more research coming around to support how te reo Māori is a source of well-being for our whānau. Te reo Māori also supports healthy brain development, a positive identity of self when we wrap language, culture, identity, love and connection around our babies in those early years. It supports socio-emotional well-being. It supports the way that we learn as positive learners. It helps our tamariki with engaging with kura, with school, and it helps us create positive identities and sense of self. And so some of the ways that we're running this kaupapa, so in Whānau, sign up and jump into He Waka Kōrero. We have lots of whānau all joined together, and we use a waka navigation framework to guide whānau through exploring their te reo Māori journey. So we start off with what are your reo Māori aspirations? What's the destination? So what would you be proud of? What would fill you with pride in seeing your tamariki, seeing your mokopuna with the reo? So what is it, where is it that you really want to get to? We also have a kōrero about who's on the waka reo Māori with them. So Liz talked earlier about, it takes a village. So when we're thinking about who's on the waka, who is your village? Who are the people there supporting with your reo? What are their skills and knowledge and resources? Maybe mum doesn't know te reo, but she's happy to read a te reo Māori puka puka. Maybe auntie's an amazing kaiwaiata or a composer. Are we making sure our babies are connected to our aunties who are the beautiful singers, or, are we making the most of the skills and knowledge in our waka? And then we explore, we know who's on our waka, we know what the destination is, but how do we get there? So exploring what do whānau already know. Whānau often know a lot, but think that they don't. So asking them what supports them already, or exploring what they already know in a group setting, allows whānau to go, oh yeah, no, I do know that. I just didn't really think about that, or think it was important because it's so normalized in their whānau. So being able to get whānau to understand what they already know and how it's already helping them get there. It builds their confidence, it affirms their knowledge, affirms what they know. And when we're trying to build confidence around the reo, it's a really important thing to do. It's a way that helps them keep moving in the right direction. So this becomes a bit of a reo plan for those whānau. We also talk about confidence. We talk about the benefits of bilingualism. Lots of people still think that bilingualism or learning more than one language can be really confusing for our tamariki. However, our tamariki are the most wired to learn language in the first couple of years of life, more than at any other time in life. So the best time to start introducing a new language is in the kōpū. So while our mama hapu, before babies are even born, they're already starting to listen and learn languages. And if they're having a difficulty with languages, it won't be because they're trying to learn multiple languages. It might be because there's something else going on. And then you might want to kōrero with a speech therapist or seek some other support. We also talk about mana and tapu. So Liz talked about that earlier. So we talk about how we can acknowledge the mana and tapu of our babies through communication by acknowledging when our babies communicate with us. So Liz also gave that example of some of our young tamariki being in those big hui. And recognizing the mana of those tamariki through listening to them and hearing what they had to say. And for our really early young babies, before they're even verbal, there's all kinds of ways that we can notice their communication. Like if they're looking out the window, like, oh, they're interested in a manu out the window, or a manu flying outside, so we could add language or kupu to that. Oh, e rere ana te manu I te rangi, the birds flying through the sky. So gifting and adding language and concepts to our babies. We talk about the importance of pūrākau and storytelling. Matala spoke about that with her whānau, so same for us. We talk about the importance of pūrākau and storytelling. And oriori, so one of the things we talk about are oriori, so waiata that were composed for our babies, that contain rich whakapapa, histories of our babies, the aspirations that our whānau hapu and iwi would have for our babies. And what I find really interesting about our traditional ōriori is that they contain some of the most rich and complex language that we have in te reo Māori. And then those were sung to our youngest members in the whānau during the kōpū, while babies were in the kōpū, during haputanga, during pregnancy. So this tells me that our tupuna knew and understood that our babies were learning language right from the beginning, they were learning language right from the beginning during pregnancy. So it tells me that our tupuna understood, had a pretty strong understanding around child development, the way that around language development, and knew the kinds of practices that would support growing language, culture, and identity. And they were starting to do that even in the kōpū. And sharing this back with our whānau is a way that we can affirm their knowledge, affirm practices around waiata. And we can see that the Western science is now affirming what our tupuna have always practiced. So the science coming out at the moment says that our babies are starting to learn language at around 25 weeks during haputanga. And so when we can connect the Western science to Indigenous practices, it helps our whānau to understand that our practices are really beneficial for child development and language development. How am I going for time? Am I way over time? Okay, I'll just talk for a couple more minutes and then I'll close off. So I think being able to connect our whānau to reo Māori in safe and comfortable and exciting ways, and being able to show whānau how our traditional and Indigenous practices are beneficial for child development, for language development, for good for well-being, helps whānau see the value of their own practices. And when I think about what we can do so I've seen lots of different groups of people who have joined on today. So people from ECEs, from Women's Refuge, from all kinds of different places. So for those people who are out there working with whānau, I think being able to let whānau know that practices from their culture can help with child development, learning, and well-being is a pretty amazing thing to be able to do. We can let whānau know the benefits of their cultural practices on child development. So making those links for this is the science that we know, and your practice of doing karakia or waiata or kapahaka or dance or prayer. This is how the science is affirming some of the practices that you already have. For people working with whānau who are under a lot of stress, I would love to kōrero more around karakia, but so karakia is a way to, we know that toxic stress is bad for child development, but being able to do things like karakia, sing waiata, can lower our stress, and it can also bring us into a more of a learning space, which can help us learn te reo Māori more. But so people supporting whānau who are under a lot of stress, being able to affirm whānau practices like karakia, like waiata, and letting them know the benefits of those for the whole whānau, but also on child development, can let whānau know, oh, we already have this practice and it's a really healthy, beautiful practice that we can have for our whānau. And being able to support whānau with that, understanding their aspirations and being able to support them with those can be really huge. A lot of whānau don't get asked what they would be proud to move towards. So just being able to ask whānau things around that. When I think more around our policy level, many of our whānau are learning te reo Māori in their own time and at their own expense, on top of parenting, on top of working, and on top of many other kaupapa. So when we give whānau financial support or time to learn te reo, it's good for our babies, it's good for the well-being of our tamariki. Kia ora. I'll close it off there.
Kia ora, Hannah. Yeah, just such rich kōrero. So while Nat has a look back through the chat to see if there's any part-time, we have a couple of minutes before we go into the breakout room. I just have a question for all three of you. You know, it's very clear from what it is that you have spoken about, that you and your the way that you're doing your mahi is benefiting whānau and pepe and tamariki. And what do you need? What does your organisation need? What does your group need to be able to continue to do the mahi that you do? You know, you're supporting so many in these amazing ways. You know, what supports do you need when we go back to that community-led development weaving, and you're in there and there's all this other weaving around you? You know, how else can those threads be woven around your mahi to support you more? Liz, perhaps I'll come back to you first just for a quick answer to that.
Quick answer.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right. This answer might connect with Hannah a little as well. Funding models seem to have moved away from nationwide funding, which when I do I do a lot of my mahi on Zoom and online. And so immediately that means that the mahi I specifically do, while I'm enabling communities and local communities, it can be hard to acknowledge this new technical era that we're in, that we don't just deliver face-to-face. We do that as well, and actually that funding's easier to come by, but it's been a hard few years trying to get funding for more of this, because this is still a way to share ideas, this is still a way to connect. We have beautiful wānanga in this online space with Whānau who share very strongly, and I guess it's being more accepting that this is a way that we will continue to communicate for the rest of our lives. This isn't going away. Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm also all for on the ground community development, but if you're talking about what makes things hard, that's where my mind jumps. I think coordinating and collaborating within communities is always a challenge, but that's just a networking challenge. And I think events like this helps build connections. Hey, if anyone in your rohe wants to have a wānanga from me or from Hannah or from Matala, reach out. And Child Rich Communities has brought us together. So let's take advantage of this and go forward and do things together. But that's not a great answer. Hannah, have you got a better one? Or Matala?
Ooh, I think I mentioned it before, but like, you know, how Māori whānau are often learning te reo in their own time, at their own expense, on top of everything else that they do. I know Toi Tangata are doing a kaupapa around supporting their Māori who work in healthcare to learn te reo, but to be supported to learn it, not just to do it in their own time. So everybody wants te reo at the moment. We want Māori to be thriving, but are we supporting the people who are doing that to be able to do that, or are we expecting people to do it in their own time? So yeah, how do we support people to do that? I think te reo Māori is becoming more of a taonga in Aotearoa, and I think that helps a lot. So a lot of Māori whānau at the moment are being like, oh, I want te reo too, and it's feeling safer and safer for people to do that. It still feels hard, I think, for a lot of people, but it's getting safer. So yeah, we also need a whole lot more te reo Māori speaking speech therapists and Māori speech therapists. So it's really hard to get our Māori into speech therapy, our kura kaupapa kids into speech therapy. So pathways for our kura kaupapa kids into work like that is really amazing. Yeah.
Thanks. Matala, did you have anything?
I'm the same with Liz. I think there needs to be easy access to funding so that we can acknowledge the contributions of many that put into the work that we're doing within our organisation, and also support for our Pasifika dads as well is very important. And hopefully that will, like, we have a father already that's taken on paid parental leave instead of his wahine. So he comes to our group, or has been to our group twice now. So how good would it be to have that support there for him as well? And yeah, it would be awesome just to see that group thrive as well. And have a Pasifika Papa group.
Yeah, neat. Thank you. Well, it's time for us now to move into our breakout rooms. Nat, do you just want to put the slide up? So what we'll do is we'll put you all into breakout rooms for about 15 minutes to be looking at these questions. When you first get into the breakout room, if you can just spend a minute introducing yourself. And then if you can elect or volunteer to be the person who's going to take some notes about what you talk about. And then when we come back into the main room, if that one person can then load the chat with that information, just in case we don't get time to hear from everybody, then the information that's in that chat, we will then cascade out to everybody by email afterwards. And also the people who haven't been able to make it today, they get that email as well with the information also. So the couple of parts to be discussing in your breakout rooms. What have you heard today that can support a shift in thinking and practice around how we engage with mokopuna and whānau? How can we be more child-rich in our thinking, actions, policy, planning, and take some notes about what it was you're talking about? So if those people could start to load that information in the chat, and then that's what we can share with everybody else. But I would also like just to hear from one person in each group, just to give some feedback right now, which may or may not be the note taker. So please raise your hands and enthusiastically hop on and share with the rest of us what it is that you've been talking about. Who would like to go first?
Ta-da!
Kia ora.
Ko lao sa hau no witiri Waitangiroa ki Kōrero. I'm a strengthening families coordinator in Wesley at Waitangiroa in Kōrero. We lost a couple of people, so it ended up just pretty much me talking, and I just was talking about cultural identity in my job, but also that language in our colonized system is led for the majority to think that that is our cultural identity. I'm a second language learner, and I have seen fluent speakers be so disrespectful to us that don't have the reo, but we have the heart and the mana and the integrity. And so I've always walked the talk of, just because I don't have the reo doesn't mean I'm not Māori. I wear it on the outside, and my heart, on many occasions, is more Māori than those who speak it fluently, because they use the language to uplift their mana, which is not what it's about. So I was talking to a Samoan lady, and I said, just because you don't have the language doesn't mean your heart isn't your culture. And you can show it by actions. Words are cheap. Actions show and speak louder. And as for our tamariki, we should have them with us like traditionally all the time around us, so that they have a wider variety of learning from all of those that are in their environment and stand beside them. And they will pick and choose with the knowledge and foundations that they're given to what suits them on the day. And it also brings out their talents. And aroha mai, I have to go because I've got another hui, but thank you for listening. Kia pai o koutou rā, tuturu te wā tuku Māori, e noho rā koutou.
Kia ora, ka kite.
Waitangiroa. Okay, sorry guys. Kia ora, I was on another hui.
Ka kite. Oh, well, yeah, just some lovely, passionate kōrero. Too bad we can't come back with some pātai, but yeah, who else would like to comment or to reflect on either what you just heard then or what came out of your breakout room?
There's been some interesting research around what Fire just said and around how I definitely have experienced this, but as a second language learner, pinning my whole identity on Te Reo Māori, on something that I didn't have, and it can be a really shaky ground for whānau to be on. So just want to mihi to Fire who shared that, where although a lot of us want, 90% of us want Te Reo Māori, it's a really hard thing to get to. And being able to support whānau to connect to any cultural practice that they have supports whānau to feel, connects to well-being, really. So yeah, kia ora.
And you speak so much also of just meeting whānau where they are, and with the wisdom and the knowledge that they have, and being able to see those taonga within them, rather than having like a preconceived idea as to what that needs to look like. Yeah, kia ora. Hi, Bianca, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. I just wanted to just kind of jump in, and it was something that we talked about in our breakout room, but just to say that I feel like this is something that just keeps coming up over and over again for people not feeling something enough. So not feeling Māori enough because you don't have enough reo, not feeling Pacifica enough because whatever reason, like your parents haven't raised you this way, or it's your partner that's Pacific, or whatever. A lot of these themes keep coming up, and it's something that I've been really interested in as a topic. And I think one of the things that I'm really realizing is that actually this kind of feeling in between, or not quite something or the other, and feeling like you're supposed to be one thing or you're supposed to be another, but actually you're sort of not enough of either, is actually a really universal experience that a lot of people feel like outsiders in a lot of spaces. And actually so for us working with whānau to kind of acknowledge that, and to kind of just say, like exactly what you're just saying, meet them where they are, and just kind of really validate and say, what, where you belong and where you sit it's a changeable thing. It's lots of things, and you don't have to just be in one group, and you don't have to feel like you're the most central belonging person to be recognized or to be part of these things. That actually it's fine to feel a little bit that and a little bit something else. It's still valid, and it's still it shouldn't be a barrier to participating in any of the kinds of things that we're talking about in any of these types of groups, because I think people are enough with what they bring, and that actually there's richness in having bits and pieces of lots of things, and it's not being not enough. It's actually a strength, because you've got lots of little bits of lots of different things. So yeah, I just think it's a thing that a theme that I just see coming up over and over again. And I think when people can kind of share that and feel okay about being a little bit this and a little bit something else, and celebrate that rather than kind of hide from it, I think that makes us all stronger and can help our work too. So.
Yeah, you speak wonderfully to those essence of how we empower, how we get alongside, how we engage, how we enable seeing mana in in everybody, as Liz spoke to in the beginning. Yeah, time for one more person who would like to feedback. Come on, I know you're out there. Anyone like to give us some feedback about their groups?
There's some great stuff in the chat as well, Louise. Good summaries from each group, it looks like.
Would you like to read some of those out, Nat?
Oh, there's quite a lot here.
There's one.
Yeah. Well, not just offering events in wānanga for whānau, but making sure you're planning them with whānau. Making sure we have parents and carers in our committees to remind us to work in child-centred ways, affirming practices that whānau are already doing and strengthening their identity, their whakapapa, which fosters hauora. Do the voices of tamariki and rangatahi involved in planning and organising events. are they there for them?
Mm.
Having those voices.
Yeah, kia ora. Yeah, wow, some really rich conversations. So before we close, I'm just going to return to our three speakers, just to have a last word from them also. With the pātai that I gave them earlier to ruminate over. But just to really hear from each of you what you feel is the one most important aspect for us all to focus on, which helps us to support the shift to more child and whānau rich ways of engaging and building in our communities. So Matala, would you like to start?
Thank you, Louise. Thank you to our breakout room too. What you guys shared in there was awesome, and I'm glad that my conversation and Liz and also Hannah's conversations were able to impact, the work that you'll do today and going forward. I think a most important aspect in the spaces that we all work in, especially with our tamaiti and our peers, and also our parents, is being able to listen, listen to the feedback that are given to us from those that are, involved in our spaces, because we won't be able to grow if we're not listening and making changes to be able to support what they need and what they really come to us for. So if we're listening and we're open to feedback and we're making those changes and being impactful in our spaces that we work in, then I think, we'll really thrive in these communities and we'll really see our children, enjoy life. And yeah, to me, that's one of the main things that I'd like to push, is just that listening ear and being able to receive feedback and working on it and implementing those changes.
Kia ora. Liz.
Cool. Kia ora. Thank you, Matala. I really love that kōrero and really value it. In our breakout room is where we were talking about doing things with whānau, not just for them, with tamariki, not just to them. For me, the most important aspect to follow on, if I link it back to my kōrero and to our tupuna, is about acknowledging the tapu and mana of pepi and tamariki. Because if we really embrace that, we're embracing what it is to be Māori, where we acknowledge the mana and the tapu of everyone. But it's really about recognizing that inherent kind of worth and dignity of our little ones, acknowledging their mana and their incredible potential as future rangatira, chiefs of tomorrow. And so why does looking at them in that way and seeing their tapu and mana shining through them help us make that shift to more child and whānau rich ways? Well, by following in our tupuna in that way, we change that framing, we change that focus of our everyday, of our whānau, of our communities, and we really create an environment that is rich for tamariki and whānau, an environment that fosters growth, fosters learning, fosters happiness, order. So I suggest to you all, the next time you see a kid, see a tamaiti, just kind of look at them a little different. See their tapu, see their mana, their prestige that they're born with, because they all have it. They all stand there proudly on their two lovely little feet, looking at the big wide world with their beautiful eyes and their big brain. And if we see that in them with everything we do, in particular our mahi, then we can, we'll be traveling together towards a real child-rich communities and like we want to achieve here. And I'd really love to see that. So that's my challenge to you all. Noho aurora, noho oro mai.
Hannah.
Mine would be around aspiration. So really finding out what whānau, what excites whānau, what's exciting and interesting to them around their culture and identity. Might be hiding behind some whakama or some feelings of not enough. But there will be something there that is really exciting for them. It might just feel so far away and hard to reach that you might need to be in a safe space or with other people who have similar aspirations to be able to even share those. And then understanding how we can support whānau aspirations, how can we connect them to kaupapa that is exciting for them, and then just affirming them, sharing back, you know, what kind of cultural practices do they already use and have, and how can we affirm them through going, hey, when you do karakia, do you know that it supports stress, toxic stress? Did you know that's good for child development, for brain development, for learning? So as educators and support people, we can help whānau make those connections, and that affirms their cultural practices. Yeah, kia ora. So aspirations and affirming.
Oh, kia ora. Yeah, I'm making some notes here, and all of this can come out to you all in emails, as well as the information that you've put into the chat and the recording and other links that some of our speakers have also sent to us. Because we had so many, that's Nat just launching a poll. If you could just click on one of those, that would be great. Because we had so many people registered, over 100, then there's obviously a lot of interest in this topic. We've decided just to hold another lunchtime session, just on offer to the people who have registered. That'll just be an hour of very informal kōrero, where we can get together. You know, we'll go into some breakout rooms if there's many of us, but just to be able to network and speak some more to this topic. So you will also get the link to that in the email that comes out. So yeah, for now, just it's left to me to thank you all for showing up and giving your minds and your hearts to this kaupapa for the benefit of our tamariki and our rangatahi and our whānau. And to thank once again our three incredible speakers for your time and your heart, your passion, and the mahi that you do. So yeah, ngā mihi nui. And we'll close with karakia. Kia tau ki manaakitanga, ki runga e tina o tātou, kia piki te ora, kia piki te māramatanga, kia hoki pai atu, kia hoki pai mai, tūturu whakamoa kia tina, homie, huie, tai kie. Kia ora everyone, kia pai tura. Hope to see you again soon. Ka kite.